It didn't listen to me. It walked out of the thicket. It turned around and looked at me.
They looked up, and in this tree, there was a monkey man. And the monkey man jumped down out of the tree and started running away.
And suddenly they're right in front of the car. He slams on the brakes and manages to stop, and he's skidding because it's like quite, gravelly. And literally for about a second and a half, they just stood there because they don't know where to go, and you tell them panicking. They're like rib flapping, and their face is like twitching.
Welcome back to Bigfoot Society, a podcast where we focus on cryptids, the strange, and the unexplained of this world. If you've got a story or something weird to share, send an email over to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support this show, head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now, on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, you've got the privilege of talking to Tristan Yolton today. He's a Bigfoot researcher from Washington State. How's it going today, Tristan?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you got it. It's a lot of people have been throwing your name around, and I remember seeing you in Tate's, I believe it was a Bumping Lake documentary he did in his series that came out a little bit ago, a search for Sasquatch, search for Sabe. But is there anything else that the listeners should know about you, Tristan, to kind of set the stage?
Well, growing up, I've always been interested in monsters and creatures, and Bigfoot was one of the things I was interested in, but I was never interested in going out there looking for it. It was just something that I like, I like dinosaurs, and aliens and, things like that, Godzilla. I like those kind of things growing up. And Bigfoot was, just another thing that I liked, that I was interested in. But I never had any, I didn't want to go out there to look for it. I just thought it was just something cool, So that all changed for me, though, in 2015, when my father heard some whoops coming up from this hill behind our house one morning while he was taking the trash out. And he didn't tell us about this until like a week later because he didn't really think anything of it. But I guess he was kind of stewing about it and maybe thought maybe it could be Sasquatch. So he brought it up to me and my mom, and we were like totally surprised. And so we decided to go up there. Me and my mom decided to go up on this hill. And we left a recorder out and a jar of peanut butter and some peanut butter crackers. And the next day when we went up there, the jar looked like there was a hand that went inside of it. Like you could see some possible dermal ridges on the side of the on the inside of the jar, and possible like fingerprint, finger holes inside of it, like possibly something took its hand in there and scooped it out, scooped out the peanut butter. And the peanut butter crackers were gone, but they looked like they were opened very neatly, not like, ripped open like some kind of like a bear or something would do it. It kind of looked like somebody carefully opened it and took the crackers out and ate it. And the most weird thing is I had this recorder strapped to a stump with a bungee cord on it. And when I went over to it, the recorder looked fine. It looked like nothing touched it. But when I went home and listened to it on the computer, about an hour after we left the recorder up on this hill, and it became dark, I would say about an hour later, something came in, and as you hear on one of the recordings I have, you'll hear it eat the food, and then I guess it sees my recorder and comes over to the recorder and starts growling and messing with it, fumbling with it. And I mean, the thing is, there's no marks on the recorder or anything like that, so I had no idea that occurred.
Wow.
And, I've left recorders out in the woods before, and I've had bears take them and, chomp on them and eat them eat them to bits. And whatever this thing was, didn't do that. So that was very strange to me. And, Was that a bear that did this? I have no idea, but it's not the same kind of behavior that I've experienced with other recorders. So it really makes me wonder. And also on the recording, there's this really loud, at the beginning of it, there's a really loud humming feedback kind of a sound. And I don't know if that's a moth going by or something else, but it's some kind of weird interference that just, goes by the recorder. And then a few seconds later, you'll hear a wood knock, a possible wood knock in the background, and a whoop. You'll hear that. And then about 30 seconds later, that's when you start hearing this thing start, coming in and start eating the food. And then you'll hear a loud, really deep growl, or it goes, ugh. I guess it sees my recorder. And then about a few seconds later, that's when you hear it come over to the recorder and start really growling and messing with the, fumbling with the recorder. So, and then after that happens, it just leaves. It just stops what it's doing and it just leaves, and there's just silence. So, again, if it was a bear, I would think the bear would really try to eat it and scratch it and chomp at it. But my recorder was intact. There was no scratches or tooth marks or anything on it. So that really perplexed me. And to this day, I have no idea what that was. But with some of the sounds that you can hear on the recording, such as a possible wood knock and a whoop in the background, makes you wonder what was going on up there.
That is really weird. And that, I have listened to all your audio. As it turns out, that's not one of the ones I had queued up. But what I'll do is I will actually play that at the end of this interview so that listeners can hear that one as well, because it's an interesting one. And but you'll have to wait until the end of the interview to hear that one, because I want to make sure you hear that one as it was referenced. But let's give listeners a little bit of context as to so in that area where you had those Bigfoot interactions at the beginning, are you comfortable with maybe a certain region of Washington that you were in, to give context for the listener?
I'll just say it's near the Cascades Range, near the mountains. Sure. It's not near the Olympics or anything like that, like where the Olympic project is. It's like totally near the mountains, mountainside. So, and that's the thing too, like this area around where I am, it's surrounded by forests and mountains everywhere. So it's the possibility of a Sasquatch being around is very, very high, in my opinion, very possible. And
absolutely.
What I think is happening, or was happening, because I don't even know if they're still going on up there, if that's what they are, if that's what it was. But we were thinking maybe this hill was a travel route for them, and maybe they're going to and from, like every night or every few days or something like that through there. Because there's really no, at the time, there's really no development up there. There was, it's just pretty much woods up there, and there's also a stream up there. So maybe they felt comfortable in traveling that as a route every night, or whenever they wanted to during the night, without being detected or being seen by anybody. And one other thing I want to mention about my dad's encounter, if you want to call it that, is after he was taking the trash out in the morning, and then he was going to go to work. So on his way to work down our road here, he saw a herd of elk standing in the middle of the road, and they were all looking up towards the direction of this hill up here. So they must have heard those whoops that my dad heard, and maybe that spooked them. But my dad actually had to drive around that herd of elk that was standing in the road. So he thought that was very odd behavior to see them, do that, to be focused on the hill up there. So I don't know, man. Yeah, I can't say for sure that was a Bigfoot, but really makes you wonder, though.
It does. And there's a lot of things from that account that definitely makes you wonder what was going on there, for sure. So after that, it sounds like you kind of really got interested in the whole Bigfoot thing. Is that right?
Yes. Oh yeah, definitely. And it's pretty, it's pretty shocking to me, because after all these years of living out here, I never had a clue that if Bigfoot exists, that they would probably be right you're right, near where I live.
Hmm.
So that was a huge shock to me, and that really got me interested in maybe I should start investigating this more. And the audio, of course, hearing the audio just really started it. So yeah, after I did that, I started I started checking around. Like I started looking on websites for sightings and Bigfoot groups, and I won't say the name, but we did get in contact with the Bigfoot group, and we started searching with them for a few years. I would go on campouts with them,
Okay.
and that kind of that was able to teach me, some more things about what's going on out there, possibly. But unfortunately, I haven't really experienced that much with that group. But they did teach me. They were able, but going, but being part of that group, though, it did teach me, things of what to look for and maybe how to approach some of my research.
Oh, sure.
But in terms of experiences, though, I haven't really, to be honest with you, I haven't really experienced that much with the group. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it's mostly been on my own kind of research. Is that where I've been able to collect things mostly. But I will say there's been some times where I have collected some audio, like at Bumping Lake. If we would go to Bumping Lake, I would collect some audio there with them. So yeah.
So talking about Bumping Lake, which if you're in the Bigfoot community, that's a buzzword area that's been going around quite a bit over the last few years, depending on, who you're keeping in contact with or whose YouTube channel you're listening to, watching. Can you describe the Bumping Lake area? From what I know, it's a lake that is to the east of Mount Rainier, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, roughly. Mm-hmm. Yes. Very high up in elevation too, like 3,000 feet or so up in elevation. There's two ways you can get there. There's one way from Yakima to get there, and there's another way to get there called Chinook Pass, where you have to go up where you basically have to climb up this pass, like up this mountain to get there, basically. For me, it takes almost 3 hours to get to Bumping Lake, and the Bumping Lake Road itself, it will take you 45 minutes to an hour. Well, actually, 45 minutes just to get to the lake itself. It's a long. The main road getting there is a long road to take, and then there's some campsites. So here's the thing: the Bumping Lake is very huge. It's a very huge lake, and there's some primitive campsites behind it. Towards there's a dirt road behind it which leads to these primitive campsites, and that's where we like to go in terms of our our campouts, because it's away from the lake. It's more towards the mountains, and there's some RV camp spots right next to the lake, and that's where a lot of people congregate and populate there, and we try to get away from that as much as we can. And obviously during the summer it's very popular. I mean, you'll see a whole bunch of people out there fishing and rafting, doing all sorts of stuff out on the lake. So but the surrounding area of Bumping Lake is just a forest and mountains. And in my opinion, it's perfect habitat for these guys. Like, though, there's elk there, all sorts of wildlife, and of course you got the big lake, the source of water, and there's also little creeks and streams around, and a lot of woods, a lot of high peaks and everything. Like, it's perfect for these guys to be there. And yeah.
Are there reports going back pretty far of seeing Bigfoot there, or is this a thing where it's just more recent times that people were realizing that there have been Bigfoot seen and heard in that area?
Well, kind of like what you mentioned, like Bumping Lake has been, it seems to be more popular in the past few years, but from what I understand, like it's been kind of like a secret area for a lot of Bigfoot researchers. Not a lot of people know about it until maybe the past couple of years, but I guess that's because more people are hearing about it and taking more people up there. Kind of like what happened with my Bigfoot group, is that they took us up there.
Right.
So it wasn't really a well-known thing everywhere. It was just more kind of a secret area for a lot of I would say maybe Washington researchers. And as far as how far back, I mean, it could be back from the 80s and 90s from what I know. Yeah, there could be a lot, people, I know people going up there for years. So it could be, reports could be stretching, from years back, possibly. So I bet I bet you can probably, search for reports dating back, back then too. So,
oh, no doubt. Yeah.
If you know where to look for those, you know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So
let's talk about, so going over, I was looking through all the files and folders you sent over. And from one of the things I got right away is that you've been researching this area and gotten evidence out of it for multiple years. There were folders, 2020, 2021, 2022, right? Have you had any interesting encounters, or what kind of things have come out of your time researching in the Bumping Lake area that you consider interesting when it comes to Bigfoot research?
Well, I guess the main thing for me at Bumping Lake is gathering audio at these primitive campsites. As I named in some of the folders, there's one called California Camp. There's two main, for me, there's two main camps that I go to that were introduced to me with my Bigfoot group that I was going with. One is called California Camp, and another one is called Rock Camp. And the interesting thing about those is that they're a mile apart from each other. They're not that close to each other, but they're still very far out there. They're very remote, primitive camp spots. And Rock Camp, for example, was very popular with the Bigfooters. Like I've gone there and I've seen other Bigfooters camp there. So it's a very well-known spot. And I know that Bob Gimlin, he's been there before and he's had some stuff happen to him there.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah. So, it's a very popular spot. And, but yeah, they call it Rock Camp because it's a camp that's kind of, it's like a circular camp that's surrounded by some high cliffs and peaks behind it. And there's a big rock shell behind it. And, but I guess that's where they got Rock Camp from. I really don't know for sure, but that's what I'm assuming why they call it Rock Camp. And for me, that's the majority of my Bigfoot audio, if you want to call it that, has occurred at this camp. There's like a little hill above. Within this big circle. There's a camp. There's like a main campfire, and behind it, there's just a bunch of woods, basically. And then there's like a rock shale, and then that mountain peaks behind it, all surrounded by woods. And if you watch Tate's documentary, you'll see some of you'll see some of that. And the thing is, I believe that if there's Sasquatch there, they are coming down from that mountain peak and rock shale, and they're coming down to this hill that's right above our camp, and they're watching us, at the campfire or doing whatever. But I think they come down and watch us from this hill that's behind us, and I possibly think they're juveniles. I possibly think they're juveniles because when I put an audio recorder up in this hill, I've gotten some. I mean, as you probably heard on the audio, I've gotten some weird language kind of sounds and speech and chatter and stuff like that. And that's not us. We're not making those sounds at the campfire. I have these recorders pointed at the woods, and there's no campers behind us. That's all woods back up in there. So something's coming down and making those sounds, man. And I can't say for sure it's Sasquatch because I didn't see it, but something is making those sounds. And I personally think it could be juveniles doing that. That's
before we get into some of the audio, just to clarify, how far away from so you've got the California camp and the Rock Camp, you said are a mile apart from each other, right?
Yeah. Those camps are a mile. So there's like a dirt road, right? It's it's a bumpy dirt road. It's not paved or anything like that. Like it's really rough on your tires. I've seen people go through it like crazy, but they shouldn't, because they'll pop a tire easily. These are very primitive campsites, and some of the campsites are a mile apart. Others are like maybe across the road, but still a little ways away from each other. But like I said, like this rock camp, for example, there's no campsites behind us there, so there's no way anybody could come through there from behind.
Got it.
And again, I'm getting like some of these sounds are happening way late at night too. So who the heck is out there behind us doing that?
That's what I'm curious as to the so you listen to some of these sounds and I'm like, I gotta have the context in the story behind these sounds, because some of them are wild, man. Let's go ahead and let's start with one of them. Okay. I'll play the sound first and then you can give the story behind it. So Here we go. That's cool. So wild, dude.
So that wasn't recorded at Bumping Lake, which is fine. That was recorded at an area about an hour away behind my house.
That's behind your house?
Well, it's like an hour away from us. Yeah. It's not like right behind. I mean, there's a forested area where there's logging that happens it's like warehouse used to be behind us back here, and somebody else bought them out. But it's a big lumbered forest area that you can, in some spots, you can only get in through a permit. There's some gates with, you have to have a permit to get in. And this area is one of those. I'll just say it's near a lake. It's near a lake behind one of these permitted gates. And my mom and I went to this spot one time, and we were just researching. The thing is, we've camped in this spot before, and I've had an audio recorder in a tree next to our truck. We camped in a truck one time, and I had an audio recorder on this tree next to our truck. And during the night, something was throwing pebbles at our truck, and you could hear a whoop. Yeah, you could hear a whoop too.
Oh my goodness.
So that really got me excited. And there was another time, and I told this on Joe's show, but there was another time I camped there in the same truck, and I put a recorder out in these woods here near this lake. And about 3:00 in the morning, I woke up and I said, you know what? I just want to get the hell out of here. So I'm going to go out there, and I'm just going to get the recorder and come back, and we can go home. So I did that. And the thing is, I didn't have a flashlight on me or anything like that. I just had the moonlight. So I just followed the moonlight to the recorder into these woods. And when I picked up the recorder, as soon as I picked up the recorder and turned around, there was a loud growl behind me. And
no way.
It scared the hell out of me. And I did not look behind me. I just stared right ahead, and I walked all the way back to my truck. All the way back to my truck, and I got in my truck, and my mom saw me, and the first thing she said was, "You're as white as a ghost." And what I said was, "Drive." All I told her was drive, and we got the hell out of there. So that really freaked me out, and that helped get some interest in this area. So that recording that you just played, she and I went up there during the daytime, and on our way out, I did a really loud whoop, and I was let's see, where I was when I did the whoop, I was away from the lake, but close enough, for the sound to carry across the lake. But I couldn't hear from where I was. I couldn't hear anything coming from the lake. So that whoop response, there's 2 whoop responses you hear in it. Those I couldn't hear. Those were on the recorder when I listened to them. So, and the wood knocks,
Okay.
the wood knock sounds that you hear were me doing that. So those 2
Okay.
whoop responses you hear, after my initial whoop, and then you hear the
Okay,
whoop,
got
whoop.
it.
The 2 whoops was something in response to me. Those 2 whoops there, and then so yeah, there's my initial whoop, and then you hear the whoop whoop. Wasn't me.
Wow.
And then I did the knocks. I did the 3 knocks, and then you hear one more whoop, which was kind of like a buildup. It goes whoop.
Yeah.
Like that last whoop was like a
Wow.
buildup kind of a whoop, and that
So
wasn't me
it was
or anybody.
you first, then your knocks, then 2 whoop responses.
No, it goes like this. It goes my first whoop. I go whoop.
Yep.
And something goes whoop whoop.
Okay.
And I didn't hear that in person. I didn't hear that.
Wow.
And then so that's the thing. I didn't hear a response. So I just said, well, maybe I'll do a wood knock. Maybe I'll get something.
Okay.
So for me, it was silence after I did my initial whoop. So I did 3 knocks, and then that's when you hear that response again, the build-up response. It goes whoop whoop.
Let's
You want to
listen
play
to
it
it
again?
again.
Go for it. Yeah.
Now that we have the story. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
What was your response when you heard that audio recorder and you heard the responses on there that you hadn't heard in real life?
Dude, it was total wow. Like, where the hell did this come from? Because I didn't hear that in person. And and there was nobody else out there with us, man. It was just me and my mom. So it was shocking. Total shock. Like, where the hell did this come from? Because I couldn't hear it from where I was. So where I had the recorder placed, I guess it was closer to wherever this thing was. So I was the recorder was able to pick that up, but I couldn't hear it with my own ears. So maybe the recorder had to maybe it amplifies sound. So maybe that's why you hear it better. But in person, man, I couldn't hear any of that. So that's why I did the whoop and then the knocks, because I was thinking, well, if I'm not going to get a response with a whoop, maybe I'll try some knocks. So
it's so cool because it's like, yeah, they're similar, but the response one does ramp up. And it's like, oh man, it's hard to describe, but it's very cool.
Yeah.
I've only ever heard something like that at the zoo in the Gibbon area, which is weird.
Yeah, right. And that's the thing, like, that wasn't my whoop you heard the second time or third time, because my whoops are like, whoop. But this thing, like, if you listen to it more, like, it sounds more natural, like a more natural kind of a whoop sound, like, something that's different than me. Especially like that ramp, like you're talking about that third one, when it goes whoop. I wasn't doing that.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's awesome, dude. That's legit. That's legit. If I had heard that, I would have gone nuts. That would have been cool stuff. Let's go on to another one. And this is the drumming one. I'm really curious what this, I'll play it for you so you remember. And then I'm just curious what the story is behind this one.
Okay.
What's the story there?
Oh yeah, I remember that one. This was at rock camp, and me and some fellow researchers were at our campfire, And that's the thing too. We like to make some noise at the campfire, try to hopefully bring them in. That's our way, using drums and instruments and talking and laughing. We were hoping that will bring the Sasquatch in. And so what happened on that one night is I the thing is I always have my recorders placed up on this hill behind camp, either just a digital recorder or with a parabolic mic as well. I got a parabolic mic a couple of years ago, so I've been using that more.
Okay.
But for this recording, I think I had a Tascam recorder for that, and I just had that strapped to a tree, and I have that pointed towards the mountain, towards the woods. And that's another thing too. I place these recorders pretty far up on this hill and into the woods. I try to put them far away from camp, as possible. But with the surrounding area around us, like any sound we make at the campfire is gonna kind of echo around, so I'm gonna pick them up. But if you hear in the beginning of that recording, you'll hear like a female voice and like a real deep male voice closer to the recorder, and I don't think that was one of us making those sounds. That last sound where it goes, that real loud thing.
Yeah,
that wasn't us, man. Like,
you don't know what that is.
No, anything close to the recorder, in my opinion, is something that's close to the recorder, not us.
Oh my goodness. That's
why I'm saying, like, when you hear those voices in those far off voices, like, it sounds like somebody singing. I think that's one of us at the campfire. But when you hear something closer to the recorder, like there's a female voice that's close to the recorder, and it's saying something that you can't even understand what she's saying because it sounds like a different language. And then you hear like a male response to that, I believe, towards the end of it, that real deep sound. And again, it sounds like a language that doesn't sound English or anything to me. So
wow.
I think they're conversing. If it's a Sasquatch, I think they're conversing with each other while watching us at the campfire. So yeah, you'll hear us singing and stuff, drumming in the recording as well. But if you hear some real, close voices, I think that's what could be Sasquatch, possibly.
All right, let's listen to that again. Then that's some good context. Here we go. That's weird.
Yeah.
Oh man, that is weird.
Did you hear that female kind of voice in the beginning?
Yeah.
And it sounds like a different language to it, right? It doesn't sound like any kind of English. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's it just sounds like some kind of odd native language to me. And that response, that was a real deep response when it goes about.
That's weird, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So. Yeah.
Roughly how long ago was that?
That might be from 2000. I don't know if it's dated on there, but it might be from 2020.
Okay.
I've been the past couple of years I've been getting a lot of audio up on that hill every time we go there.
Okay.
In fact, I even got some during Tate's expedition as well. I think I included those in your folders. But on the last night we were there with Tate, Paul Graves is playing his guitar and singing, and then up on the hill there you get a couple of response stuff happens. Like there's something that goes whoa, whoa, and then you hear like a wood knock or like a whack sound. Now the real funny thing about this stuff is that we don't hear this stuff in at the campfire. This is all on the recordings. There's been a couple instances though, and I don't know if I can't remember if I included them in the files, but we had a friend at the campfire one time, and he went, whoa! And then from the hill behind us, you can hear something mimic him twice. And I actually heard that in person. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I can't remember if I have that in your audio recordings that I sent you, but yeah,
I don't remember that one.
Goes,
or maybe
whoa!
I just didn't know what it was at the time.
It's all good. But that's one of the things we've heard at that campfire is, like those kind of responses. So, again, again, if these are Sasquatch, I think they're juveniles coming in to watch us and messing with us.
It's almost like you need a way to do like a live monitoring of the audio that's being captured in your camp at the
Yeah.
same time that you're recording. I don't know if there's even a way to do that. Like that's cheap enough for, for most Bigfooters, myself
Yeah.
included. Yeah.
I mean, I've thought about camping up on this hill, but I'm kind of afraid to. But at the same time, I kind of want to do it now just to see if something happens, if I see anything. Because,
well,
I don't know.
Tristan, if you don't, you're going to be regretting it for the rest of your life. When you're an old dude, you're going to be like, I should have done it. Like, dude, you should do it. That would be wild. Oh man,
I probably should. But again, like, is that going to deter them? I don't know. Maybe they feel Maybe they feel comfortable on a hill. So if I go up there and actually stay up there, maybe that'll scare them off. So I don't know.
Or they might feel threatened. I mean, you never know unless you try, right?
Exactly, unless you try. And another thing I want to bring up is that there's been some forest fires up Bumping Lake the past couple summers.
Oh, really?
And so that I think that might have just disrupted some things. So and that's the other thing too. Not every time you go there, you're gonna get something. And so that I think everybody should know that is that don't always expect to get anything every time you go there. It's always like it's like it's just luck, And also real quick, that recording I sent you, the 30-minute one, the one I played on Alex's show, the chorus.
Yeah,
that was a California camp a couple of years ago.
Okay,
it was just me and my mom camping there, and at 2:00 in the morning, these things started going off, and it woke me up. But unfortunately, her hearing isn't the best, or she couldn't hear it in person. But I'll tell you, man, like the recording doesn't do it justice. It was so freaking loud. And it was coming from different directions too. It wasn't coming from one source.
Oh my goodness.
So I don't know what it was. I can't say for sure it was Sasquatch, but in my personal opinion, it's either Sasquatch or somebody making those sounds. I don't think it was any other animal out there. Because they sound like some kind of vocal, like some kind of vocal track making those, like a humanoid doing that. So what Tristan is referring to is if most people are going to be aware of who Alex Petikoff is from Beyond the Trail. He used to have a interview YouTube series live stream, and Tristan's been on it 2 times, correct? 2 different shows, yes. And you were able to play shows. a lot of the audio on those shows. So after this one, head on over. I definitely recommend you head on over, listen to the 2 Tristan episodes on Alex for even more sounds. What I have next is when I saw these 2 sounds, I was excited to hear the story because I have a story that is very close to those sounds myself, as listeners will know. But I'll play them, and then we'll get your story here. So go ahead. So those are recorded at Rock Camp behind, again, up on this hill behind us. I just have these recorders out, man. They're just pointed towards the woods behind us up on this hill. And yeah, these zipper sounds, I've actually captured these in different spots as well. There's been a couple other spots I've been to that I've captured these zipper kind of sounds. And so is it Sasquatch?
Goodness.
I don't know, but I've heard other people talk about these kind of sounds before as well. So
how far away is your recorder from camp approximately?
See, up on this, wait a minute, we're talking yards. It's not like feet. We're talking yards up on this hill. I'm not the best with distance, but I'm telling you, it's not that close. Like I walk up pretty far in there. I pointed it in the woods, and I just let it run. And then you get these things at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning going off.
Oh my goodness! On
their own. And like I said, I've heard those zipper sounds. I've recorded those zipper sounds in other areas as well. So I think there's something going on with that.
Obviously, you're not. Are you unzipping your tent during those nights?
No, but these aren't near these aren't near their tents, so they wouldn't even capture those kind of sounds.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the weird thing. So I'm just going to give you the summary real quick, Tristan.
Sure.
So when I went on Out with Tate in the Iowa episode of that documentary series, we had my recorder about, I mean, it was far outside the campsite. It was not near the tent, and I didn't leave my tent at all that night. And at around 3:45, I get a sound recording of what sounds like a tent zipper. It sounded just like that. And I've heard similar stories, but like nothing as close as the story you just told me of that you're capturing these zipper sounds, not even close to a tent outside of the camp. That's wild, man.
Yeah, man. No, like these are far from my tent. So, you know, I figured it's just some kind of way of conversing with each other and, you know, some kind of communication that they do if it's them.
Wow.
And like I said, I've heard this in other areas too. I've captured it. I've captured that same exact sound in other areas. So it makes me think it could be Sasquatch. But again, you know, you can't see what's making it, so it makes you wonder. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't know about that. That's interesting. I haven't heard very many people tell me about, you know, that. Well, I've heard the same thing because I haven't really heard that before from other people. So that's interesting.
It messed with me for quite a while, Tristan. Until I heard in a few other interviews I did with random people how they've experienced the Sasquatch unzipping a food container at their camp, and also a Sasquatch unzipping a tent that a female was in out in the Pacific Northwest somewhere. But yours is different because it's obvious that it's making the sound because it's not close to camp, which kind of makes me interpret my story in a way too. But it's just very interesting to think about. So thank you for that.
Yeah, because I've wondered the same thing because you know, the more you listen to it and the more that I've listened to it in other areas, I'm starting to wonder if maybe it's just not a mimic of some kind. Maybe it's some kind of communication that they do amongst themselves.
Definitely.
I also have a record. I don't think I put it in the files. I apologize, but I also have a recording where there's a thing that comes out to the recorder and it makes a really loud whoosh sound with its mouth. It sounds like it makes it with its mouth, and then you hear it start talking. You hear it start talking with something else. But it's just funny when you hear this weird loud whoosh, like whoosh sound that it makes with its mouth. And
that is intense.
So I don't know what that's all about. It's pretty loud too. I guess I should have put it in with the other files, but I just have so many that
it's a lot. Like,
yeah, it's a lot.
Listeners, you just have to imagine the most Bigfoot files you've ever seen. It's a lot.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I've been recording since 2015. You know, I've been going out there.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
That's why I have so many files, and that's the thing too. Like, I recommend people record all the time as much as possible, because even when you're around, like, you won't even know. Even if you can't hear anything in person, that doesn't mean the audio recorder won't capture anything. That means
that's true.
I've been able to capture things on my audio recorders while I'm there in person, and I just never heard it. But you hear it on the recorder, so you know I can't explain it.
Let's play some more sounds here. Let's see what we got up next.
Sure. That was at rock camp behind on this hill again behind our camp, and
wow.
And again, we didn't hear that in person, but on the recorder you could hear it. But
oh wow!
But as you can tell, that was a weird language, right?
That's weird, man.
And then you hear the knock afterward. And I've heard that many times. You hear that many times where you hear like a vocal and then a wood knock, or vice versa. So,
do you think it's a wood knock or maybe even a rock clack? It's hard to tell.
It could be a rock clack. Yeah.
Let's listen again. It's a totally different language, man.
Yeah. See, like, I wouldn't be able to make that sound, like, or even come up with that sound. Well, my huda. It sounds like a native kind of a language.
Oh, that's weird. Wow.
And that's the other thing too. Like, I think a lot of people think that the Ron Moorhead sounds are going to be everywhere you record, and that's not like every language you record is going to be like Ron Moorhead's, and that's not the case here. I think if we're dealing with the Sasquatch, maybe it's a different type of Sasquatch, or a different tribe of them, that they're not all going to have the samurai chatter and things like that. Could be just a different tribe with a different kind of language.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what we got here.
Okay, so that was recorded at California camp, and I was around midnight, and I was up at I was up with another Bigfoot researcher, and we were just talking at the fire, and all of a sudden that thing just popped off behind us, way in the woods, behind our camp in the woods. But it was pretty damn close. And again, like that, it was even louder. That was even louder in person. But that thing just popped off right behind us, and then that was it. No other vocals or anything like that.
I was for certain. I was like, he's gonna say that was him, but no, that's a sound that you capture, and it sounds really close to your camp too.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like it was right in the woods there, probably watching us. But that came from where California camp is more like a slope. It's like it kind of slopes up into another hill, but you can actually camp up on this hill as well. But where I was with this other Bigfoot researcher, we were at this campfire towards the entrance of the camp. And then this thing, wherever it was, came from the hill, up behind us, behind our camp in the woods. And it was, like I said, it was very close and very loud. So wherever it was right there. And it has a really, even Alex mentioned on his show, its lung capacity is crazy, and it carries. Like that sound carries too. So no, that wasn't me or anybody. Everybody else was asleep.
The way that I'm interpreting it, or does it almost sound like it has like a female tone to it?
Yes,
or
that's
maybe,
right. Yes, or maybe a juvenile, maybe a female. Juvenile.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's really weird. I'm gonna play it one more time. Well, that would mess with me, man.
There's no campers behind us there, so I don't think it would. I personally don't think it was another camper. There is a road next to California camp, but there was no, as far as I remember, there's no campers around us at that point. So, and everybody else in our camp was asleep. It was just me and this other Bigfoot researcher at the campfire. And that thing just popped off. And only did it once. No other vocals were heard that night. But that was it. And he immediately said, "That's a Bigfoot." As soon as he heard it, he said, "He said that's a Bigfoot." Like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That really freaked me out though, hearing that in person, because you don't expect that. It just happens out of nowhere. So yeah.
I saved what I feel is my favorite for last. If I had heard this, I would probably, I don't know what I would do. I would probably been like, pack the bags, because if we stick around here, we're just going to get taken out. But I'll play a little, because it's a long clip, but I'll play a few minutes of it here, and then I'll have you talk about it. So,
okay.
Okay.
That went on for 30 minutes straight.
It's hard to explain, but that's the only clip that I almost had a feeling of, I don't know if dread is too over, like it just it affects you when you hear it. And it's hard for me to explain. And I can't imagine hearing that in real life.
Dude, it like I said, the recorder doesn't do it justice. It was incredibly loud. I have you ever heard the Snohomish recordings from the 70s before? There's some sounds in those recordings that sound very similar to that. The whoop howl.
Who are they with again?
I forget who. I forget who the woman's name was, but she was near a rock quarry, and these were coming from a rock quarry in Snohomish, Washington. Back in the 70s,
I know I've heard the name, but I can't think of what they sound like, so I'm going to have to look that up later.
Yeah, look that up later, but there's what's called the whoop howl, and immediately, as soon as I heard this in person, I said, wow, that sounds just like the Snohomish stuff. Now, I'm not saying that's the Snohomish recording. I'm just saying whatever that is sounds similar to that, the whoop owl. And like I said, when you hear that sound, it does sound like something dread, something you would dread and run away from. Like a male, that's a male yelling, possibly a male Sasquatch.
Do you think there were multiples in there or just one?
Yeah, throughout the whole recording, like you'll hear, different types of voices, like, possible female voices, maybe juvenile voices. It's like a whole chorus of them. And they were coming from different spots too. It wasn't just one spot. It was like different spots from around the whole area there.
Wow.
And again, this was at 2:00 in the morning, and it went on for 30 minutes straight. There was no breaks in between, basically. So, if it was a human doing this, why the hell would they be doing that for 30 minutes and with that kind of lung capacity and with that many, possibly many individuals as well? And I've never heard a vocal, I've never heard anything like that before. Besides that whoop howl stuff in the beginning, I've never heard the rest of the chorus stuff before. So again, if it was humans, why are they doing that 2:00 in the morning for 30 minutes? I mean, they didn't even stop. If there are people call blasting, they didn't stop for a response. It just keeps going.
That would be weird, right? Yeah. There's that's a good point.
Right.
Yeah, the chorus stuff is weird because it's like I've heard other recordings that are similar to that from the Pacific Northwest, like the chorus thing.
Yeah.
But like yours is very unique as well. And man, so you woke up at 2 a.m. and you heard that live.
Yeah. That first call you heard, that first thing woke me up. It was just so freaking loud.
Wow.
Yeah, when you hear that, when you hear that thing, man, like that roar kind of sound, like that woke me up out of my sleep.
Oh my goodness!
And unfortunately, my mother couldn't hear that in person. I kept, that's why I have that. That's why I had that 60-minute version one that I played on Alex's show, because I didn't want to have, me and my mom talking while you hear that stuff going on. So that's why I had that edited version, of just the sounds. I didn't want my voice and her voice in it. And there's been some other Bigfoot researchers. I'll just say Dave Ellis has gotten sounds from there as well. That's kind of similar to that chorus sound. And I've actually
he's recorded himself. You're saying?
Yeah, he's recorded there before, and he's gotten some sounds from there. And in fact, some friends of mine who were there last year got something kind of similar to that in September. They recorded something kind of similar to that. A little bit ways down from California. It was further away from California, but California camp, but they recorded something kind of similar to that.
Wow.
But again, like 30 minutes, man, why would anybody do that for 30 minutes? They would blow out their vocal cords if it was somebody singing or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. What time of year did that happen in?
That was in July 2020, July 17th. So it was after, obviously it was after 4th of July. So, obviously people, I mean, that's the thing too, like this, people do go to this lake and camp and stuff. I mean, there are people there around, but I don't know. I don't know if the Sasquatch are comfortable with that or not. I mean, Why would something
Hmm.
so elusive be making that sounds like that? That's what makes me wonder.
That's so
Are
weird.
they that comfortable to make those kind of sounds, you know, and for that loud, you know, being that loud too. So, but maybe the
Have you?
Sasquatch are comfortable there.
Yeah, I
don't know.
mean, we don't know. Have you had people analyze your sound, especially that clip there, like people like David Ellis?
Yeah, Dave Ellis and Chris Spencer, Monongahela have all looked at it, and
Oh, cool.
you know, Dave Ellis and Chris Spencer say it's not it's wherever it is comes from a living thing. It's not, you know, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they think it's from a living subject, and I guess Monongahela agrees with that, but he made the comment. I wish the audio was closer to the subjects, but I do too. But you know, I couldn't help that. So
Right. Yeah, good point.
but they
Oh,
but they both
good
but they
stuff.
did say they think it comes from a natural, you know, source, that it's not fabricated. And you know, for the record, I'm not hoaxing anything here. Like, I'm just putting my recorder out there capturing sound, so I'm not hoaxing anything.
Yeah, I mean, you're camping out and having a recorder, doing some wood knocks, doing some sounds yourselves at times.
At
But I
times,
mean, you're
not
just
all the time, but
capturing
yeah.
you're just capturing
Yeah.
the audio, you know?
I am. I'm just putting my recorders out there and letting them run, just like other
Wow.
researchers are doing. I'm doing nothing different, really.
Let's I got a few questions for you about recording audio, and hopefully, you know, people
Sure.
listeners can get some, you know, really solid advice from this. So when it comes to, let's say you have someone, they're going out in the field, and it's their first time where they're going to try to record audio, right, of a Bigfoot. What are the absolute, like, what's the necessity, the must know advice about recording audio out in the wild?
Well, for one thing is I keep my audio recorders in plastic bags to keep from moisture and, you know, condensation. You know, like, obviously it rains a lot here in the Pacific Northwest, so I try to keep them covered as much as I can. And I put them on bungee cords and I strap them to trees and such and just let them run. And sometimes I'll put moss on them too to try to hide them, and maybe put some different smells on it. Because here's the thing, like I mentioned earlier, I've had bears grab my recorders and chew them to bits or carry them off somewhere.
Right.
Now, you know, I've lost recorders based on that. So I actually try to hide them with moss and put some different sound, you know, scents on them. So hopefully a bear won't sniff them out. But I think a bear is attracted to the batteries. I've heard that before, that there's something.
I've heard that as well. Yep.
There's something that they're attracted to. So just be aware of that. You know, if you put in a battery operated device out there, like even game cameras. I think they've done that with game cameras as well. So going back to the recorders, I mean, what I like to do is, as I mentioned with Rock Camp, I like to put them around, say that you're at a campsite. I like to go around the campsite, but not too close to it, but just far enough to maybe where something can just watch you. And I like to put, you know, kind of put audio recorders in different spots, you know, like say one part of this hill and another part of the hill over here, kind of like surrounding the campsite, but not too close to it. Just in case you might get something coming in and watching you. I like to do that. And as far as me, and you know, there's also times where I just go to a research area and I'll just leave a recorder out, like on a stump, high up on a stump, or on a hill or something like that, kind of high up, because I think the Sasquatch like to be in high places. So
absolutely,
they may come up and down a hill, So I try to keep them up high a little bit, just in case, you know, they might walk by it. But, you know, I'm really doing nothing special with these recorders. I'm just putting them out on trees and such, and making sure they're covered. And you know, I try to look for areas, you know, I try to look for spots where there's water, like a lake or something.
Okay.
And then maybe like there's a ridge you can walk up or something, you know, like a high hill or a high spot where I think the Sasquatch might come up and down that hill to the water, or to get maybe some kind of food source, like a deer or something. That's how I think, you know, these guys are operating. So going back to like camping, like if you have a high spot behind you,
Right.
possibility of Sasquatch might be going up and down that hill, that mountain to watch you. So, and that's another thing too. I like the idea of bringing them in as opposed to going out after them. I think you might have better luck in capturing audio that way if you bring them in.
What if your camp was on the high spot? It's just a random thought.
No, that's a good idea. Yeah, if you can find a spot where you can camp up high, maybe. But I think the Sasquatch like that kind of cover idea. They kind of like the idea of being able to have some cover.
Right.
And maybe they might like to be up high to watch you. I'll just quickly talk about a quick thing that happened. And I think I sent you the audio of this too. But in one of my research areas, me and my mother put up a plot watcher in this little gully. Like it's kind of like just like a hill you can climb up that overlooks like a little gully. And I believe I've seen some foot traffic near where we put this plot watcher on this tree. And up above us, there's like a stump. This is like 30 yards away. There's a stump. And one time I put a recorder up there running on top of the stump that's like 30 yards away up above us. And down below, my mother and I were putting up this plot watcher. And then when I went home and listened to the recorder, I heard some possible speech and chatter on the recorder, as if possible Sasquatch might have come in and watched us put up that plot watcher. And I have that. I put that in your files. I think it's called Bigfoot Close to the Recorder. But you hear some voices talking to each other, and it's not me or my mom. So I don't know what the heck it is.
Oh, wow.
But that's the thing. I think in some instances, the Sasquatch might be watching people put up game cameras and things like that. And they might be up high too, where you can't see them. So they might be in a strategic place watching you. But, I'm not saying that's always the case, but I think in some cases, maybe that's what's happening. And that's why people aren't getting things on their game cameras, because they're being watched.
Oh, sure.
As well.
Do you have a specific recorder model that you use?
Yeah, let's see if I can get it up here. Well, kind of a mess, but I'll just show you one of my new ones. This is this is kind of expensive, but this is the kind of recorder that I use. It's a Sony PCM recorder, PCM D10. This is one of my new recorders I've got, and it has two microphones on top. Okay. And it's pretty hefty, but this will record for 8 hours. And
wow.
And like I said, what I do is I just put it in a bag, and I just put these on a tree or something, have them sticking out towards the forest away from camp, and I just have them record overnight. And yeah, there you go. It's a whole night. Do you have to when you're setting up a recorder for the first time to use for Bigfoot audio recording, do you want to make sure that you do any specific settings a certain way, or? Well, that's the thing. Like, I know there's some filter settings, noise filter settings, but I actually don't even use those. I use Adobe Audition for my audio.
Sure.
My audio editing. So I just use that, if I need to bring down the noise on something. But no, honestly, I just make sure I set the parameters on this thing so it doesn't overpeak. Obviously, you have to set them. You have to set the speakers to a setting where it doesn't go into the red all the time, because that's where it peaks.
Gotcha.
And you get that real crappy audio. Other than that, man, like, I just let it run, and I let it run on normal play, not on long play, because long play will give you really bad audio. Just let it run normally. Okay. And recorders like this will only run for like 8 hours because of the batteries. It eats up batteries pretty quickly. So there are other smaller recorders. Let's see, can I get one? Well, I'm not the most prepared showing you recorders, but anyway, well, you can cut this part out. But there's small recorders that I use that will actually record for at least a day or two, like 24 to 48 hours.
Oh, wow.
Recorders. So I use those as well. I don't always use these big guys. I like to use this big guy when I'm camping out, like at Bumping Lake, for example. But if I'm just going to a research area, I'll leave out these little small digital recorders and just leave them on trees for a few days or even a week or, even a couple weeks. Even if they run out of batteries, I just, after a week or two, I'll just go back and grab them and listen to whatever couple nights that are on there. So,
that is interesting.
But
what
parabolic.
Parabolic.
But I got to say, though, like, definitely if people are going to be doing audio recording, try to get a parabolic dish because, like, the voice quality is amazing on those things, and they'll pick up things even further away. And so I've had pretty decent success with it too. So I recommend people try to get a parabolic dish to use when audio recording.
So you can use that with an audio recorder, because I've seen that used, it's for live monitoring, right? But you can use it for recording. You're saying? Oh
yeah. You can strap a dish to a tree, and you can have it plugged into one of these guys.
Wow!
And you just have a recording. Yep, that's what I've been doing.
Oh man,
I've been doing that with this and with a Tascam. That's my other big recorder. Is called a Tascam. Yeah, you can hook them up to these things, and they'll record whatever's on the from the dish. That feed.
How much longer do you think you're able to go out roughly with a parabolic attached to it?
Well, that's the thing. Like, the cord on the parabolic, at least the one that I have, doesn't go very far. So you have to keep these close together. Like, what I usually do is I'll tie both of these to a tree. Like, I'll have the parabolic dish facing out on one side of the tree, and then I'll have this guy on the back of it, and I'll bungee cord both of them together, and have them, have this recording. Both of those.
Sorry, I said that question not good at all. What I meant to say was, so let's imagine with a regular recorder, you're able to capture like a mile out of sound. How much further out do you think you're able to capture if you've got a parabolic mic in the mix?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm totally misheard or misinterpreted. Maybe. Well, I don't know if these will record a mile out. Maybe, but maybe double that. I'm not the best with distance, man, but maybe double that. Especially depending on especially how big the dish is. How big of a dish you're working and how much sound it can funnel and pick up.
Gotcha.
Too.
Very interesting.
That's the thing. Like, I've used this before. This is like a $40 one you can get on Amazon.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
You can actually, this is like for birds, but you can actually take this out and record with it as well. But the other dish that that I have is bigger than this. But this is just a little small example of something you can use. You just have to click in the trigger for it to record, but you can still hear it. It still captures pretty well. Pretty good audio.
Are you of the mindset that you start recording right when you get to the campsite, or when do you usually start your recording?
Well, when I'm camping, I like to wait till it gets dark. And and a lot of times I even try to put them out as it's getting dark. And that's the thing. I'll walk up the hill when it's dark out, and I'll just put a recorder up there with a flashlight or something, with a headlamp or a flashlight. I'll just go up on the hill and put a recorder out even when it's dark. But I believe we get most activity during the night and as we're at the campfire. So I like to put them out right as we're going to the campfire for the night, and I just let them run all night, and then I go back in the morning and pick them up. If I'm camping there, I just pick them up in the morning.
Have you ever considered doing a long-term field recording unit? And I don't know if you'd be able to put it in the area out there. I've talked to Chris Spencer about units like that before.
Right. Yeah. With Chris's unit there. Yeah. I would love, that's something I'd love to try. I don't have one, but I would be interested in trying that out. But the other thing is, going through audio is a heck of a process. Like you have to sit
It
there
really
and
is.
listen you have to sit there and listen to hours and hours of audio. So that's why I
It's
kind of
crazy.
that's why I was some of my recordings I like to just go at night, and then I can get through the night possibly. And I obviously if you have a spectrogram or a graph, you can see these little spikes, and hopefully you can just zero in on that and go, oh, that could be a possible sound. But
Exactly.
that's the other
Yep.
thing. There's been sounds that the audio that the recorder picks up, but when you look at them on a spectrograph, they're really low. They don't always
Oh,
show up as like big spikes or anything. You actually have to really listen for it, like little blips and things like that, because they're not always going to be real loud. So that's another thing I want to bring up is that, if you're looking at a spectrograph, don't always look for the big waves, because you got to get stuff in between that, or even down below where it gets kind of, where the noise is too. You have to really look for these little orange bumps and things like that in between.
oh,
Because
interesting.
there's some other sounds going on, man. It's not always like these big, wavelengths. So, like with speech, for example,
Okay.
for like speech sounds, as opposed to like howls and stuff, you get like
Yeah.
little blips of things, or like the zipper sound. That zipper sound that we were going through earlier, those
Yeah.
don't go like this. They're like little
No.
things on the spectrogram that you got to look for.
Yeah, you could easily
So-
overlook that if you were just going by spectrogram. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you're not listening for it, you're just you might overlook it because you're not looking for the big, the big wave points on there. So
Absolutely. Oh man, Tristan, this has been a very, very interesting discussion, and thank you for sharing your audio with me and my listeners. That was cool.
Oh yeah, man, totally.
cool.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I recommend people just going out there and recording as much as they can if they're going to be researching. That's all that's all I'm doing. I'm nobody special doing this. I'm just putting my audio recordings out there, and hopefully it captures something. But you don't always
There you
do that.
go.
You don't always get something on audio. So
Hopefully, we'll be checking in with you in the future. And who knows? Yeah, who knows what will come out of Bumping Lake next? Especially maybe even if you camp up on the hill. We'll see if that happens or not. But that would be a wild adventure. But or any last thoughts before we close out the night?
Well, just in general, like even what I mentioned in Tate's documentary, like, when you go squatching, you're not always going to have something happen. It's not like what you see on the entertainment shows, like Expedition Bigfoot or something, for example.
Right.
You're not always going to have something happen to you. So I just want people to understand that, it's the reality is that not a lot happens when you're going out there. And, I've had so many hours of recordings where I have nothing on them. So it's not like every time I go out there, I get something, but hey, if you're in the right spot, yeah, sure. Maybe you'll get something, but don't always expect to get, audio or anything, or, audio or other kinds of evidence every time you go out squashing it, because that's just the reality of it, in my opinion. And so I just want people to know that, the reality of Bigfooting is that not a lot happens. And sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you get something, but it's not like what you see on TV.
Exactly. And if you do go out and you don't get anything, stick with it, try again, and eventually you'll get lucky. How can people, is there any ways that people can keep up to date with what you're doing, Tristan, or contact you or anything like that? Or is it a thing where you kind of keep under the radar?
Yeah, but the thing is, like, I don't post my stuff publicly. I mean, I'm happy to share them, like, on podcasts, like with you, or
Yeah, sure.
Anybody, honestly. But yeah, I have a YouTube page, but that's not dedicated to Sasquatch. That's just more other stuff. But if people want to reach me, they can go on Facebook. I'm on Tristan Yolton. They can contact me there, message me there, and I'll be happy to talk to them about anything. And but yeah, I mean, if I get anything new, I'll contact, you or, somebody else about it. And,
oh yeah, absolutely.
I'd be happy to share them. I'm happy to
Yeah.
share my stuff with anybody. I mean, there's nothing to hide.
Cool.
So yeah.
So there you have it. It's one of those interviews where if you see the name Tristan Yolton pop up in a podcast, you know it's going to be something good. So make sure if it's not on Bigfoot Society, it's something else. Listen to that one too. But Tristan, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a really fun, and also learned a lot about audio recorders. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I had a great time.
Thank you for listening to Bigfoot Society. If you like the show, please review and rate it 5 stars on iTunes. Hit the share button and send this episode to all your friends on social media. Subscribe to Bigfoot Society wherever you listen to podcasts. It doesn't cost a thing. Pick up a Bigfoot Society shirt or enamel pin over on our Etsy page, and people will tell you all about their Bigfoot sightings when you wear it. At least that's what people tell us. That's what happens. If you'd like to become an official member of Bigfoot Society with a membership card, a community of like-minded individuals, and extra content each month, then please consider becoming a supporter of the podcast by going to www.patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. Thanks for listening.